shall we begin?
Let the games begin.
All right.
A new age has begun. An age of freedom.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
Get to the chopper!
This is going to be quite the ride.
And hello, everybody, and welcome to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host, Christian Renteria. This is usually the part where I will say this is the Movie Pit Podcast, where we talk about all the big breaking movie news items of the week, along with the trailers that came out this week and movies that are coming out in theaters this weekend. However, that is not what I'm doing, because this week it is a special podcast. It is as you can tell from the title, a spoiler-filled reaction podcast to Spider-Man No Way Home. This will also coincidentally be the last podcast of the year, because obviously the holidays are coming up and I want to spend time with my family. This will be the last podcast of the year, fitting in itself that we're talking about one of the biggest movies of the year here right at the end of it. So let's just get right to it. Again, it's a spoiler filled, so if you listen to the podcast and you come to me like, why did you spoil this? I warned you at the beginning, it is a spoiler filled podcast. So let's get to it. I'm going to start off with some missteps. Now, I want to come fully forward and say that I really, really liked Spider-Man No Way Home. I really don't have anything really negative and bad to say, which is the reason why I'm not saying the negatives or the cons. These are just missteps, because I really don't have anything negative to say about the movie. So the first misstep that I would like to point out is the tease. Okay, by the way, this is also a spoiler for other movies that have come out recently from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And the other Spider-Man movies. I think that probably should have, gone without saying, but I'm going to say it right here again. Anyway, so the first misstep is the Tom Hardy, Eddie Brock appearance. The tease at the end of Venom, Let There Be Carnage, one of the post-credit scenes, got some fans excited because it was like, oh, okay, Tom Hardy's going to come into the MCU. He's going to be a part of the movie. They did a really good job of hiding him in the trailers. People, were speculating that maybe they saw him in the trailer at some point, but there was also that picture also of Hardy with the production hat of No Way Home, and everyone was like, okay, he's going to be in it. Not the case. Instead, it's another post-credit scene, this time with Eddie Brock and Venom at the resort, and they're trying to wrap their head around the new universe they're in, of course, the MCU, and finally he says he's going to go to New York and, talk to this Spider-Man and see what's going on, and then because it's a post-credit scene and it's after the events from the movie, Strange's spell goes into effect and he goes back to his own universe. So no Venom. It's only Eddie Brock. No showdown between him and the Spider-Man, especially him and Maguire's Spider-Man. Although Maguire's Spider-Man does mention that he fought an alien from space, and Holland was like, yeah, well, I fought an alien from space and in space too. So which I thought was very funny. So the Eddie Venom thing, which is kind of a gag, which is kind of, a little bit of a shame, because that would have been interesting to see him interact with the characters. But I think it also would have made the movie just a little bit bloated, especially near the end. But he does leave a little part of himself. Venom leaves a little part of himself in the MCU, so there is a chance we can get a different Venom anyway, in the MCU, which is pretty exciting. Of course, in the comics, Eddie Brock is not the only person that has taken the Venom mantle. Flash Thompson in a lot of stories, which of course is played by, here in this movie, by, I always forget his name. Tony, what's his last name? Something with an R. I didn't write it down either. But he, the guy who plays Flash Thompson, he takes the mantle of Venom in some of the comics. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how Venom, now with that tease, plays into the MCU, or even plays into the future Spider-Man movies that have been announced already. So that'll be very interesting. But let's look at the broader spectrum now that we're talking about this. Venom is not from the MCU. He's not part of it, because he got sent back to his universe. However, Morbius is, because Morbius is seen with Michael Keaton's Vulture in the Morbius trailers, but the cops in Morbius, in the trailer at least, played by Tyrese Gibson and Al Madrigal, mentions something from San Francisco, which we can assume is Venom. So yes and no. It looks like they're being very picky about what is actually in the movies or not, unless for whatever reason they set Morbius within the time that Spider-Man No Way Home is set, which will be very interesting if that's the case. But we do know that Spider-Man, at least when we can tell, Spider-Man No Way Home takes place, and it's not like a day or two thing. It's there's probably a good chunk of time in between those events, because there's that montage of Peter getting all his college applications sent back. So we can assume time has passed. So maybe the worlds came together, but why would they know about the stuff in San Francisco if they were? I don't know. It's just flippy floppy between Sony being like, okay, this is going to be a part of the MCU, and this is what isn't going to be part of the MCU. So it's a little annoying just on that end, but obviously they'll have to figure that out. The second part, little misstep that I have, it's just really a minor story gripe that I caught when I was watching the movie. And maybe I'm overthinking it, and I probably am overthinking it, but I just want to mention it. So when Spider-Man, Tom Holland's Spider-Man anyway, finally gets all the villains in their pods, in the prisons underneath the sanatorium, they all start talking to each other, and that's when some of them find out that they die fighting Spider-Man, or at least their version of Spider-Man. That part got to me because Doc Ock is looking for his machine from Spider-Man 2 when he first appears, and during that scene when they're all together, he mentions that he had Spider-Man right where he wanted him. And then it cuts to Electro, played by Jamie Foxx here, no longer blue, which is very nice, and says he was whooping Spider-Man's ass, which is very Jamie Foxx of him to say. I like the fact to let Jamie Foxx be Jamie Foxx and Electro, and not, not the Jamie Foxx, or not the character of Electro, the Max Dillon that we saw in The Amazing Spider-Man. He's just being Jamie Foxx. But anyway, he says that he's also about to finish Spider-Man, and then he showed up in the MCU too. So the assumption is, from that conversation, if you want to, really dig deep into it, at least for Doc Ock and Electro, who of course have died fighting Spider-Man, is that they were fighting Spider-Man, and then then they get transported to the MCU right before their deaths, so that they get pulled from their universes before their deaths, or in the grand scheme of the whole multiverse, do those events still happen in another universe, and then they get pulled and things play out a little differently in that universe they get pulled from. I don't know. Because we've seen those movies, we know that's not really the case, because we've seen, at least, again, in the grand scheme of the multiverse, we see how at least one fate has played out, where they both die. And the same goes for Willem Dafoe's Goblin, Norman Osborn. Does he get pulled from another universe? Because we've seen one version, at least, where he dies fighting Spider-Man, but he's alive in this. And it's interesting. So, and I say this because later on, at the end, when Doc Ock and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man have that great scene together, Doc Ock mentions that Peter has gotten older, essentially acknowledging that time has passed. And when they're trying to find the cure for everybody, Maguire has said that he's been trying to find a cure for the Goblin, serum that Osborn has. And even in that rooftop scene, which is also very, very good, Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man mentions after Gwen died, he became bitter and he didn't pull his punches anymore. So time has passed there as well. So again, that will just go against everything that was mentioned beforehand by the villains. And they did it. And of course, I'm pretty sure most people know by now that they did the de-aging effect on Alfred Molina, which looks pretty damn good. I'm not even gonna lie. That is probably some of the best de-aging effects they've done. And I'm pretty sure they didn't do it for Maguire. I think Molina was the only one that got the de-aging effect in the movie. So I don't know. Again, maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe, it's just a little thing that I noticed, and, maybe it is a kind of a story misstep or whatever they were doing. Because again, Garfield and Maguire do pretty much mention that, and they act like time has passed after the events of who they were dealing with. So I don't know. And Maguire doesn't really seem like, Osborn is alive. Like, he doesn't really he's surprised by it. He's like, nope, he's here. Okay, let's go at it. Let's see what's going on. So I don't know. Just a little minor story gripe there. It's not like it's gonna take away from the movie, and it doesn't hurt the movie in any sort of way. I think because there's so much going on in the movie that that kind of just flew over. But that's just something that popped out immediately to me, and I just wanted to know how other people thought about that. But there you go. Again, those are my only missteps that I have for the movie, honestly. Let's get to the pros. All right, let's move to the pros. It's easy to just say the whole movie because, again, it's just really good. But one of the things I do definitely want to point out is this thing moves pretty fast. The pacing of this is really good. It's almost a 2.5 hour movie, and it never feels that long. There's not really a moment or a space of time where it slows down, which is usually the case in a lot of movies that are 2.5 hours long. But the pacing of No Way Home is great because this thing just keeps moving and moving and moving. And even when it does kind of slow down to have those emotional beats, it never feels like it's a sudden stop. It just keeps going. It's natural progression. It just works so well. So that is a really good thing. And of course, let's mention the connections to the previous Spider-Man movies and the rest of the MCU. Of course, the big one of the first ones that came off right off the bat, the Matt Murdock cameo. So good. It's, there was all these rumors that came out, and there was all these, people speculating stuff and theories and all stuff like that. But I never really seeked out those rumors and stuff like that. So, some of them would come along the timeline and stuff like that. But actually seeing Matt Murdock in the movie was really, and the cameo of all things was really good. And also helps that now Matt Murdock being in the movie, that, pretty much strikes that, that's not the word I want to use. It pretty much, confirms, that's the word. I don't know why I said strikes. Anyway, it pretty much confirms that the Netflix series, I can't talk, series are canon. So that's really cool. Like officially canon. Like there was always that blur, like, oh yeah, like they'll mention stuff every now and then from the movies and the series, but it was never like, like a full-fledged on like, oh yeah, they're connected. So this is really cool that they got to do that. So let's talk about the Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire scenes, because the first time they meet it's just something else. That whole scene is just so cool. Their dynamic is just so good, and from the comedic stuff like the back cracking and the organic web shooters versus the mechanical web shooters, from the blockage that Tobey Maguire said he had, to the emotional stuff like their love life. Like that is just that's stuff like, yeah, from the comics, but you don't really think that you would get that in the movie, but you do. And I think it was a nice way to really give them their own stuff to do, but also give them closure. Because we haven't seen them as Peter Parker / Spider-Man in years. So bringing them back is one thing, and doing it in this fashion is also something really cool and really great. And like I said, some closure for them, especially if Marvel decides not to bring them back in any way, shape, or form. Obviously, the multiverse is there. The multiverse is part of the MCU now. So maybe they can bring them back, like in a cameo fashion or something along the way. But seeing them together and then seeing them with Holland is really great. But just seeing those two come back, have their moment to shine, is really cool. It made the inner nerd in me, and probably the inner nerd in a lot of people, really happy to see all the Spider-Man together. And if you're like me, if you're old enough like me to have grown up with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, to also see Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, and then now Tom Holland's Spider-Man, seeing all three of them together is just completely something else. And speaking of Garfield, he gets his save the girl moment. Garfield play that moment so well because you can obviously see all the emotion on his face in that scene, and it just works so well. So moving on, I really don't remember a lot of Spider-Man 3. So when Sandman actually shows up and he starts to help Holland's Spider-Man, I was like, oh, he's going to start off as a good guy, and then obviously something's going to happen. He's going to be a bad guy. But I don't remember him being a good guy in the end of Spider-Man 3, so maybe I had to go back and watch that. But I think the I don't trust anybody attitude did make his turn believable in to an extent afterwards here in the movie itself. So I think that was okay. I also really like the fact that they made Electro and Green Goblin the real villains of the movie. If you want to look at it that way, I think Green Goblin probably takes the real mantle of villain. With Electro being really OP with his power, especially once he gets the arc reactor, and Goblin being obviously probably one of the more popular villains, Spider-Man villains, and one of the best ones, movie wise anyway, even comics if you want to go that far, because Dafoe has not lost his touch with the character. Arguably, this makes him a lot more scarier than the Raimi versions. He's just so good here, and it's like giving him that conflicted split personality of Norman and Goblin until Goblin just takes over, because that scene with Holland's Spider-Man when his spider senses go off and he's getting the feeling that something's going to go wrong, and the camera kind of just starts cutting to all the villains, and you're kind of figuring like, okay, who's it going to be? Is it going to be Electro? Is it going to be Sandman? What's going on? Is Lizard coming in? Is it going to be Venom? No, it was Goblin the whole time, and I think that, you know, that the fact that Goblin completely took over and then the brawl starts, it's such a good scene. Like that, this movie is filled with awesome scenes, and that is one of them. And that brawl, because that is not a fight, it is a knockout drag out brawl where Holland's Peter Parker and Goblin just beat the shit out of each other in that scene. They're throwing each other around like rag dolls and just beating the crap out of each other. I was so surprised that scene went that hard, and that they were just literally like, they were not pulling their punches in that scene. That is really cool. But this, of course, leads to arguably the big emotional scene in the movie, and it's a scene that we need to talk about. And as of course, it's connected to the phrase that is synonymous with Spider-Man, and that is, with great power comes great responsibility. And it comes from Aunt May, which, not cool. They kill Aunt May here, and it sucks. But in terms of the story they're trying to tell, it makes sense. Marisa Tomei didn't. I mean, you could say what she was the younger Aunt May. She was the hot Aunt May that everyone wants to say. But she didn't get to do a lot as Aunt May in all three movies, but she did enough to really make that scene and that action of her dying impactful enough where it's like, yeah, she didn't really do too much, but the stuff that she did do made her character really good. And it's this, this circle, if you want to call it that, this full circle of her, when we see her, the scenes she has, and then her death really make that impactful. And she ends up becoming the Uncle Ben, like Maguire's Uncle Ben. She ends up becoming the Gwen Stacy for Garfield, if you want to say. This ends up making Holland become the Spider-Man that we know, to put him on the journey that we're all familiar with. She's the one that convinces Peter to help the villains out, because it is his responsibility at the end of the day. Yeah, they may not come from his universe, but they are his responsibility. And even when she's dying, she tells him that he did the right thing. And that scene is just, it's so heartbreaking, but it's so good in his story perspective. I love it. And that said, Tom Holland plays that scene perfectly. The fact that he doesn't fully understand or just doesn't want to accept the fact that May is dying is such a heartbreaker, and he plays that scene so well. He is so good in this movie. I think he finally has embraced Spider-Man. It took 3 movies, but I think he's finally embraced who Peter Parker and Spider-Man are, and the responsibilities of both. And I think this one does just such a good job of for him to finally embrace that character. And if you didn't believe that Holland was a good Peter Parker or Spider-Man, No Way Home will officially, I think, win you over. And if it doesn't, I think I'm just inclined to believe that you are a hater and you just don't want to accept any other Spider-Man that is not Maguire or Toby. But yeah, that final scene too, let's just talk about it, because it's a big scene. Seeing all 3 of them together is just really super, super cool. And I've mentioned it, I've been mentioning it briefly throughout. It's just really, really cool to see all 3 of them together. And just their banter together is really cool. And then when they finally work together, like when they jump off and they start swinging, and then one of them just grabs the 2 of them from their webs and just swings them over, and then they have the superhero landing for all 3. It was so good. I wish I had seen that like in a really packed theater. I rented out a theater. My family and I rented out a theater to watch Spider-Man. But I wish I had seen that like in a packed theater, like in a midnight screening or something, because I know the crowd, and I've been seeing the videos of crowd reactions all online, but I would have loved to see that with the crowd myself. Let's talk about other little random bits in the movie. Wong is Sorcerer Supreme. Because they mentioned that Stephen Strange got, he obviously got blipped away in in Infinity War and then came back in Endgame. So Wong took over. So looking back in Shang-Chi, in his appearance in Shang-Chi, he is technically the Sorcerer Supreme in that movie. So I thought that was really cool that they did that. Jacob Bantalone's Ned in the movie. He has a lot more to do in this one, which is really cool. And that little scene he has promising Peter that he's not going to become a supervillain and try to kill him, I thought was really funny because obviously it comes after him talking to the other Spider-Man and saying like, oh yeah, my best friend tried to kill me. Hey, my best friend tried to kill me too, which I thought was really interesting. Especially because if you know your comic history, Ned does become the Hobgoblin in the comics. And I mean, I don't know. He could probably still become Ned, or he could still probably become Hobgoblin still. He doesn't know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man anymore. I don't know. But let's keep talking about Ned because I've been seeing very briefly, I guess, something along those lines. And I saw a video talking about the response to this because I haven't seen it personally. But after seeing that video, I kind of get it. I just want to mention it out. I just want to put it out there. I guess there were some people irked that Ned was able to use the sling ring to open a portal so quickly, considering it took Doctor Strange years or months, however you want to, however much time has passed in Doctor Strange, to be able to use it and to be able to perfect it. And Ned was just able to pick it up. But this video that I saw of this guy explaining it, I think explained it really, really well. And they said that, one of the reasons why Strange took so long in learning everything was because he was so cynical. And, he never took anything other than science being the answer. Ned is complete opposite. He goes, obviously, besides not being a grown man, Ned is much more open-minded in the world and much more open-minded in things that he believes. He does also believe in science, but he also believes in a bunch of other stuff. And he's much more open-minded about everything. So, and there was that, little joke that he has that, his grandma his grandma, or his aunt believes that he has magic in him a little bit. So I thought that was interesting. And again, it just gives something, for Ned to do in the movie besides be the guy in the chair, which Spider-Man doesn't really need in this movie. Not really. Moving on, I'm bouncing around here because I was just, frenzy writing this outline down. Electro wishing that Garfield's Spider-Man was black, which I thought was really cool, and Garfield being disappointed for him that he wasn't black himself. And they were like, yeah, there's probably a black Spider-Man out there, which is a very nice touch of bringing Miles into the MCU, at least in the conversation. And who knows if Miles is going to come into the MCU at some point, but I think I thought that was a really nice touch. Speaking of Garfield, I just want to get this out here because when they were numbering each other off, which I thought was interesting, Garfield is number 3. And I find it interesting because technically he is the only Spider-Man that did not get a third solo movie. And unless you consider this his third solo movie. So I thought that was really funny. But also, where did all of a sudden all these Garfield Spider-Man fans come from? Like, no. You don't get to have him after you saw him in this and loved him in this. No. You don't get, no. I'm just, no. Going back to that final, just no. Going back to that final scene, before they jump off and do that great shot that I'm sure the movie's gonna sell it on. There's that moment where Holland Spider-Man is like, yeah, I worked with the Avengers, and Tobey Maguire's like, that's awesome. Who is that? Who are they? I thought that was really cool, and just again, fun little moment here and there on that stuff. So I do want to talk about the post-credit scene. And I might as well just do it here because this is my little random tidbit here section of the review. I want to talk about that post-credit scene, not the Venom one because we already talked about that one. I want to talk about the last one, and that is the teaser for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which I did not think we would get. There was rumors that we were going to get a teaser very soon, sometime after the release of Spider-Man No Way Home. And, that turned out to be the case because we got it right afterwards. So that was really cool. It took me by surprise. I was like, okay, like we're going to get something, and we were just waiting for it. And like, there was that little fake out because they did the Pascal Pictures logo and like the Sony logo. And they're like, oh, I guess we're not getting, I was like, that's weird. We're not getting a real post-credit scene, but no. We did, and it was the teaser, and I love that it was the teaser, and there was just, like it looks so wild, and knowing everything that's been going on with this is just really cool. So very briefly, I'm sure we'll get it online at some point, officially, not, people recording it off their phone. We do see the return of Mordo, played by Chiwetel Ejiofor, with a new hairdo. Brief glimpses, I should say, of America Chavez, who ends up being who is Miss America in the comics. I don't know what kind of role she ends up playing in the movie, but she is there, and I know she has the ability to open portals too. So I guess, that was a good, way to bring someone else like that into the picture. So there's that. Wong doesn't look too good. Wong, there's a lot of shots of Wong. Looks like he's fighting and like he's around like just debris everywhere. I don't know. I hope that they can't. They can't. I hope they don't. But I don't know what's going on with Wong. But he is the Sorcerer Supreme, so that will be interesting to kind of see how that plays out. Because so far, the Sorcerer Supreme in these MCU movies, they don't tend to work out too well. They don't tend to be alive very long, but he looks a little beaten up in there. Rachel McAdams is back. She looks like she's in a wedding dress. I don't know who she's getting married to, or maybe it's a vision or some sort. We don't know. But of course, we'll see Wanda. It looks like she's being recruited by Doctor Strange. And speaking of Strange, we see Strange a lot, but we also see a creature. And I want to say that's someone that I'm familiar with, but I can't. It was like that kind of like a starfish creature of some sort. And I want to say I know that's something. I've seen that character somewhere, and I can't recall what it is. And it's been bugging me the whole time since I've seen the movie. But anyway, the thing I want to talk about is we see evil Doctor Strange. And it looks like the evil Doctor Strange from What If. And if they end up combining all of that into the movies, I think that'd be really cool. I also think it'll be very interesting because the assumption is that the Doctor Strange that we see in the MCU or in that episode of What If is the Doctor Strange from the MCU. So wait. I mean, again, multiverse, everything. We don't know what's going on. Maybe it's like a hallucinogen. Maybe it's not even like the What If Doctor Strange. Maybe it is another version of that character. But either way, I thought that was really cool to see an evil Doctor Strange come into the picture, because I'm looking forward to that. So I'm just looking forward to that. So that was really cool. I just want to point that out. All right. So final thoughts on Spider-Man No Way Home. I really, really, really liked Spider-Man No Way Home. The action is great. With that brawl between Holland's Spider-Man and Dafoe being surprisingly more brutal than I thought it would be. But seeing the multiverse play out on the big screen like this, I mean, we've seen the multiverse a little bit, with Spider-Man Into the Multiverse, or Into the Spider-Verse, rather. Doctor Strange, the first movie, has mentioned the multiverse a lot, but we never actually seen it play out besides, the TV shows with Loki and stuff like that, and even What If. But seeing it play out the way it did here with Spider-Man, I thought was really cool and a great way to introduce the multiverse in all its possibilities here on the big screen the way they did, which is really cool. So seeing it play out, bringing back some villains, bringing back Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, which, like I mentioned, is not a cameo appearance. They actually have scenes. They're in that whole final act of the movie, which is really great. It just makes it's just. Seeing all of them do those fun scenes, those banter scenes, the emotional scenes, it was cathartic in a lot of ways. I thought that was really cool. So Sony also finally broke their third Spider-Man curse, which is really nice, because we got one. Sorry, Garfield, and we got a good one. Sorry, Maguire. But honestly, this could have gone so wrong and feel so bloated and a complete mess, but it doesn't. And it has so much heart to it. It's so much fun. It expands the world, the multiverse. It develops Holland's character, Spider-Man and Peter Parker even more. It finally fleshes them out. You finally get a good sense that this is the character that he is. This is the Spider-Man from the comics that we all know and love. And No Way Home is just so good. And I can't find anything really negative to say about the movie, which is really surprising because, again, this could have gone really, really bad. And I think if you can't find anything bad with it, I think that really, proves the point that this is a good Spider-Man movie. And Spider-Man No Way Home is really, really good. So, all right. A rating, if you want a rating, I don't want to be that guy, but I think I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. I am. I'm going to give it a 5. I'm going to give it a stamp of approval. 5 out of 5. Even the things that I found wrong with it, like not wrong, but like the missteps that, that I talked about, that doesn't take away from the movie for me. It honestly doesn't. I really loved Spider-Man No Way Home. I think it's a great Spider-Man. All right, everybody, that is it. That is all I have for you for this reaction to Spider-Man No Way Home. I very appreciate you guys taking the time to listen, and hopefully you guys agreed or disagreed. If you agreed or disagree with anything that if you want to talk about Spider-Man, check out the links down below to the social media accounts. I am more than willing to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home with anybody that wants to talk about it. So that's all down there. Thank you guys so much for listening. No matter where you're listening to, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and or Spotify, very much appreciate it. You guys are great. You guys are awesome. And yeah, this is, again, like I mentioned earlier, this is the last podcast of the year. I will be coming back in the new year for another year of podcasting, hopefully. Yeah, I'm going to be doing that. So my first podcast of the year next year will be a review of 2021. We'll be talking about all the movies that I watched, or not all of them, but we'll talk, obviously the list. We'll talk about the best, my favorites, my disappointments, my surprises, my honorable mentions, all that good stuff. That will be the first podcast of the year next year. Probably that first week of January. I'm not positive on when I'm going to be releasing that, but it will probably be within that first week of January for sure. Yeah, thank you guys so much for this amazing year. I feel like the podcast has grown a little bit, especially on social media, which is really great. So anyone who follows the Instagram or Twitter, thank you so much for that. You guys don't know how much I appreciate that. And the fact that I've only had the Instagram for like a year or so, and it's grown to where it is right now, is saying a lot. And I appreciate everyone, whether you listen to the podcast or not, whether you're just doing it for the follow, I still appreciate it. And yeah, so thank you guys so much. I very much appreciate it. So hopefully you guys have a very safe and fun and healthy, memorable holidays, no matter what it is you celebrate. And you also have all of that as well during the new year. So I'll obviously still be on social media and stuff, we're tweeting news and trailers and stuff like that. So, but I'll be around, but podcasting wise, nothing until the new year. So thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week and this year. Very much appreciate it. Let me know what you guys thought of Spider-Man No Way Home, rather. Sorry. I was doing so good. But thank you guys so much. Let me know what you guys thought of the movie. And I will see you guys online. And then I will see you guys next year. And as always, be safe, be good people, and go watch some movies.
Whoop whoop! Yeah! Give it up! Movies!